Why is worship important? What are the benefits of living a life of worship? And are you guilty of giving your all in worship? These are some points to ponder in this week's lesson. In this week's lesson, September 22nd, our scripture for this week is 2 Chronicles 35, 1 through 6 and 16 through 19. The lesson is entitled Josiah Celebrates Passover, and our lesson focus is now and always remember why you worship God. Isn't that a great lesson focus? And in the lesson this week, this is a great opportunity again to have engaging discussion in our classes. Remember, Sunday school is not simply about coming together and learning the word, but it's to talk about how we can encourage each other through the word. So that calls for having great questions. And those questions, you know our formula by now, comes from emotions, actions, and responses. Emotions, actions, and responses. And those are the three categories that we're going to look at in our lesson this week. Let's jump on in and see what the lesson has for us. Let's look at the first outline, which is serve the Lord your God. In the David C. Cook, it says serve the Lord your God. 2 Corinthians 35, 1 through 6. And as we go through the lesson, as always, I'm going to pull out points to ponder for discussion in your Sunday school class. I'm going to focus on verse 4. Let's read verse 4. It says, prepare yourselves by families in your divisions according to the instructions written by David, king of Israel, and by his son Solomon. Listen to those first two words, prepare yourselves. Prepare yourselves. And here's a point to ponder right at the beginning. How do we prepare for worship these days? Ask your class that. How do we prepare for worship these days? And I'm thinking right now, stories you can share. I can remember laying out clothes at night on Saturday, making sure everything is folded, everything is prepped and ready to go on Sunday morning so you're not looking for shoes and things of that nature. But ask your class that question. How do we these days prepare for worship? I think that's a great point to ponder and engage your class in that question. I'm going to pull a second question out of that same verse. Listen, and here's my second question. Why is preparation important? Why is it important that we center ourselves on what God is going to do when we gather in his presence? Because this lesson is talking about congregational worship or corporate worship, as we say these days. This is not just your individual worship, which you can do at any time, but when you're coming together as a group. Why is it important to have choir practice? Why is it important for the ushers to know their job? Why is it important for everybody to know their responsibilities? That's a great discussion. Why is preparation important? Right off the top, you know I'm going to pull in the third one. I'm pulling the third out of that same verse because it says to do it by families, do it by divisions according to the instructions. What are the benefits of order in worship? What are the benefits of order in worship? I know it seems like a lot of questions out of that one verse, but they are all so very important because sometimes we just rush through worship these days. We don't prepare. We don't think about the benefits. We don't think about the preparation that really goes into it. Don't we want the pastor to prepare his sermon? So what are we doing to prepare our hearts? Isn't that a great question you can throw in? Yeah, that's something I want you to consider. And let's go to the second outline. And it says, not since the days of Samuel. 2 Chronicles 35, 16 through 19. And there is one verse I really want to point out, and that's verse 18. It says, the Passover had not been observed like this in Israel since the days of the prophet Samuel. And none of the kings of Israel had ever celebrated such a Passover as did Josiah with the priests and the Levites and all Judah and Israel who were there with the people of Jerusalem. Here's a question to consider. Here's a point to ponder. Why did Israel stop worshiping? And I know as a Sunday school teacher, you're going to do the background so you can answer that question. But we know as they started to be infiltrated with pagan nations, that they started adopting the customs of other countries and of other gods and of other religious practices, that they had stopped their own. Well, point to ponder, why did Israel stop worship? And here's a point for us these days, a practical application question. What gets in our way of worship? What gets in our way of giving our all to God? What gets in our way of worship? That is a point to ponder there. And it says, not since those days did anybody do worship like Josiah. So here's another point to ponder, because I'm going to pull it out of the in-depth Bible study. And it says this in 2 Kings 23, verse 25, neither before nor after Josiah was there a king like him who turned to the Lord as he did, with all his heart, with all his soul, and with all his strength, in accordance with all the law of Moses. And here's the question I want you to end the class with, if I can intrude in your class. When was the last time you were guilty of giving God your all? That you were literally tired, that you would put so much prep and preparation and prayer into something. When was the last time you were guilty of giving God your all? Isn't that a great point to ponder? And have discussion about that. Why don't we? After all God has done for us, why don't we give him our all? This is such a great lesson to remind us of the centrality of worship and why it's so important in our lives. And we should be like Josiah and give our all to God. Now, give your all when you teach a Sunday school lesson and watch God do great things. Remember, give people time to answer the question. Engage people. Pull the answers out of them if you have to. Because remember, your job as a teacher, you're only supposed to be talking 40, 50% of the time. The rest should be class engagement. So let's watch God do great things in your class through engaging questions, building community, and as we become what God has called us to be. Enjoy your lesson. Bye.